The Arizona Cardinals hiring Mike LaFleur is indeed in my I like it category. And that might be a bit of a controversial opinion because LaFleur was the last guy who was hired. The Cardinals job was not a desirable one. I think even Cardinals fans knew that and accepted that pretty early. People who cover the team knew that and were kind of putting that out there. So they were not going to get the Jesse Minters or the, insert hot head coaching candidates of the world. But Nate, I really like them landing on Mike LaFleur. So when you saw this, I'll give my thoughts as well, but when you saw this, they hired Mike LaFleur, who, for people who were not aware, was the Rams offensive coordinator the last few years. He was previously the Jets offensive coordinator and play caller in the first 2 years of the Robert Saleh era before being scapegoated for that. In order for them to move on to the super static Aaron Rodgers offense under Nathaniel Hackett, who ironically is Mike LaFleur's offensive coordinator. Right. We'll unpack that. We'll unpack that as well.
It's actually kind of funny.
It is very funny. And before that, Mike LaFleur was under Kyle Shanahan. Of course, he was as the 49ers pass game coordinator for 3 years there with the San Francisco 49ers. So with all that being said, Nate, your thoughts on the Mike LaFleur hiring by the Arizona Cardinals?
Yeah, like you said, and we talked about this on Tuesday on one of the shows because it all blends together, but we kind of hinted at it and just talking about how we actually were more encouraged by this hire than maybe you would at first glance. I mean, they were the last seat to get filled. And it's not like in the old days of like 3-4 years ago where the last seat to get filled was because you're waiting for the Super Bowl teams to win. And that's why you have to fill it, because that's when you could officially interview the guy, tampering, all that fun stuff. While the Raiders kind of had to go through that, and kind of the Cardinals because they were interviewing Clint Kubiak. At least is encouraging because you're plucking a guy that's been around enough. He's young, but has been around enough in important roles. You're not bumping him up from quarterback coach. This isn't Lane Kiffin getting hired as from quarterback coach at USC to be the head coach of the Raiders at like 33 years old. It's not that. LaFleur's been around, obviously. Yeah, obviously his brother coaches with the Packers. He's a coach's kid as well. He, though, is that he's kind of had his hands in everything. He's worked with receivers. He's worked passing game wise. I think with McVay, and this is behind the scenes, I think this is more reported stuff, is he had an influence on the run game and some of the stylistic changes that the Rams have gone through the last year, becoming more man duo centric, more vertical, as opposed to more, kind of merging some worlds. That's why the Rams are so interesting. He was a part of that. Has experience calling plays, which is also a plus too. I always get a little hesitant when the OC gets plucked and then they're like, yeah, I'm calling plays now too. And it's like, well, but you didn't before.
You weren't even. Well, that's great call.
Like, why are you taking Brian Callahan with the Titans? Maybe a good example of recent times. It could work. Mike McDaniel,
Zach Taylor with the Bengals.
Zach Taylor, yeah, and took him a while to finally figure it out. And a quarterback helps. But I think with LaFleur, though, there's encouraging bones here. The offensive line coach hire, I think it's just that they're not going to be able to break. First off, you're not going to attract the top candidates. And second off, I don't think they pay assistants top dollar. And offensive line coaches, any of them worth their weight, is going to get paid top dollar. So that's one little blemish. But I think LaFleur, though, at least shows that he can kind of blend the whole scheme together. I like this. What he did with the Jets was always interesting. Really good red zone designs, always really good gadget stuff because they had they had Zach Wilson at quarterback. And I don't know. I think like we talked about earlier this week, like I'm more encouraged about this. I like this a little bit more than maybe at first glance. They're not going to be good, but they're going to at least definitely be interesting. At least in the meantime, until they figure out quarterback and everything else.
It's such a good point by you where you bring up that I always get weary of the guy essentially giving himself, like, he's already getting a promotion to head coach from offensive coordinator, but when they didn't call plays, you're essentially then giving yourself 2 promotions. I think about, this is on the defensive side of the football, but with Gerard Mayo, like he did that with the Patriots where he was such an inexperienced coach. He's like, not only am I going to be the new head coach replacing Bill Belichick, I'm also giving myself like a defensive coordinator promotion here too. It's just like, whoa, like we're jumping several levels here when you don't have a lot of experience. But with LaFleur, who obviously didn't call plays, consistently with Sean McVay's offense. There were a couple of games like in week 18 where Sean let Mike LaFleur and in the preseason like call plays and stuff like that, but he did have play calling experience with the Jets, and he's a long experienced head coach. So he's not one of these guys like a Matt Nagy who, I've promoted myself twice here to head coach and play caller. And speaking of his time with the Jets, like, again, I know the metrics weren't great. It is what it is. We all know the deal with that, but I was coming back to this quote that we're showing on the screen right now from Garrett Wilson, where they played, it was a couple of years ago, the Jets played the Rams, and they asked him, the Jets media did, about Rams offense coordinator at the time, Mike LaFleur. And Garrett, kind of went on and on. He was like, I love him. My rookie year, looking back on it, was a special time, and I might have took it for granted. And I think Garrett said that because they moved into, like, from this dynamic offense that wasn't perfect. I think LaFleur was obviously learning on the job. I'm not saying that he was blameless or anything like that, but an offense that felt very dynamic. They made really good use of like pony personnel with both Michael Carter, who's ironically was on this Cardinals roster last year, and Breece Hall. Made a lot of like dynamic formation with like pony personnel with those two guys in the backfield together. They moved Garrett around a ton, which I talked to him after that rookie year, and he really talked about how much he loved playing from the slot and getting these two-way goes from condensed formations and stuff like that, to then going to this complete static Aaron Rodgers offense where we all know how that feels. Two totally different worlds, and I think that the Cardinals getting a little bit of that injection here from what LaFleur is likely going to bring to the table in the passing game specifically, and I want to get back to the run game here in a moment as well, but in the pass game specifically, I've just been thinking about this, especially because I've been charting Alec Pierce the last couple of days because I got the free agency drop coming for RP, and I promise this connects itself. But they used Alec Pierce.
It wasn't just
so
the token Alec Pierce mentioned that we always find a way to do.
No, it wasn't. But I was thinking about this with Pierce this morning, actually, because I don't have the numbers on this. I think you actually probably could look this up, but it felt like the Colts really condensed this year offensively, where even if Pierce is that X receiver from the last 3 years, it was more so that pure boundary X, but now he's like so close to the line of scrimmage a ton. And I think that was a big part of why Pierce, close to the offensive line here and on the line of scrimmage. I think it's a big reason why Pierce had this big explosion as a player. And I was looking back at this because you sent me this last year that the Rams in 2024 had the shortest formation width for any offense in the league, and the Cardinals were, they were closer to the top of the league. And we talk about this a lot with the receivers. It's like, well, why are they just using Marvin Harrison at X? Why don't they move him into the slot? It's like the answer is not. I think honestly, if your answer to how do you get this receiver going is just like slot, you're living like 3 years ago. We can do things now where the guy is an outside receiver, but we make his life easier. So I think for all of these receivers, Harrison, Wilson, and Trey McBride, I think Petzing, we're going to talk about him later, got a little bit more villainized than he needed to, but strictly from a pre-snap deployment perspective like this, I think that there's going to be a lot more favorable formation opportunities for these pass catchers than we've seen previously in Arizona.
I think that's a great point because how the Shanahan guys use condensed formations is like, okay, they're blending run game stuff, all that, making jet motion, not like a drastic jet motion, keeps them close to the formation. But like when you use an X and what they call a nasty split, a close split, that typically you're only attacking, like traditionally, you're only attacking a couple ways. A crossing route because you're trying to make it shorter for the guy to cross across the field, maybe a spray fade. But what they did is they expanded the route tree to then you could do everything with a spray release, as they call it, which is just, outside release. And then that way you can get to what was traditional X, route tree, but then now we can make it, threaten them. I always talk about rock, paper, scissors. It's not just a crossing route coming from that. Okay, now they can run an out route. Okay, that's another option that they usually can run. But now they're running spray fades. Now they're running digs out of that. Now they're running two-way routes, whip routes out of that. They kind of just expanded it forever or more and more. And actually, as we sit here, like their receiver room actually makes a lot of sense if it's just a one-for-one translation of what the Rams have done. And I think LaFleur is smart enough to not just go like copy and paste. Like Zach Taylor, the first year with the Bengals was copy and paste what they did in LA. And that he was like under center, bunch formation, 11 personnel, like so much Tyler Boyd, if I remember correctly. And then they've kind of expanded from there because of what Burrow likes. But if you have LaFleur running this, and Michael Wilson is an amazing fit for a Ram style offense. Like amazing. You always bring this up. He can play all three spots, XZ and slot, and he's a perfect power slot. I mean, he is the quote unquote Puka Nacua role or the Robert Woods role or the Cooper Kupp role.
Yeah.
But that Z power slot, get jet motion stuff where they're part of the blocking scheme, really be a two-way threat as a blocker and a pass catcher. And then Marvin Harrison Jr. from those condensed splits can actually open up his route running tree. Then not be as static as he was maybe in the Petsing offense. The Petsing offense is very traditional, and it's how they use the guys we've talked about so much. But with Harrison, though, like if he's using in a translated role from the Rams offense, think of him more as Brandon Cooks was used in that offense. How OBJ was used in that offense for the half year he was traded there before his knee exploded. Last year, Devontae Adams, how he's used in that offense. A lot more vertically attacking, a lot of breaking routes, a lot of digs, stuff we like seeing Marvin Harrison Jr. on. Now they need a quarterback to throw them. Yeah, they need a quarterback to throw them, which is I think they know too. And Jacoby will, Brissett, but they might be an interesting team as maybe looking elsewhere. Someone approached me. We talked about these QB landing spots and all that. They might be a little sneaky Tanner McKee team. That actually would make a little sense.
Yeah, we talked about that on 301.
Yeah. I know. It was like a little sneaky one. I like that. I liked when you said that. It was just kind of all right, but maybe keeping their options open. I'm curious. Once I see who the quarterback is, I'll feel a lot better of how I predict how this offense will look, if that makes sense, just in how they attack and everything. But yeah, I'm okay. They need offensive linemen. I think more than anything, I think everyone's on the same page with that. But I'm more bullish on this than maybe how the process went, where it seems like, oh, we got this guy, I guess. It's like, no, for getting quote unquote just this guy, LaFleur is actually a pretty interesting one.
Yeah, I think I said this to you again on one of the shows that we did on Tuesday. That last year it felt like everybody's favorite. Everybody's favorite hipster team was like either the Raiders or the Cardinals, and I was out on both of those teams. This year, I actually think I want to buy in on both of those teams as hipster teams to invest in, especially from a fantasy standpoint, because of these trees coming in here. Like that's where I'm really excited. You're right. We do have to see who the quarterback is. It will be kind of funny if they do make the Tanner McKee trade, as we talked about on 301, because the Cardinals made the Kevin Cobb trade many years ago.
Yes,
and it feels like you're sort of swimming in the same creek on that one. But
I couldn't remember if that was just my thoughts or it was just me just like
I was
looking up the formation width stuff, by the way. The Rams were had the fourth tightest splits last year as far as formation width. They had 20.9 yards. The league average is 20. It's 2 yards higher. The Cardinals last year were the sixth widest formations. So non-cadet spread formations. Yeah. If you want to put one number, 28.3% of the Cardinals formations last year were spread. The Rams were at 7.3% were spread. So yeah, and I think that fits the Cardinals' offensive personnel very well.
I'm gonna need to have like a 3-hour conversation with you about some of those numbers, but we will not do it here on this podcast. My last thing, just to say, in addition to that being a big boost, your point about LaFleur helping them transition to a gap-based run game, that's pretty good here because that's sort of what the Cardinals were already living in. So they do need to make offensive line additions here and turnover, but I think that can help in terms of them getting the run game going, which is a problem last year because they were on like their fifth string running back at different times of the season. And the only other thing that I do think they could add here, and maybe Mike LaFleur just brings Tutu Atwell over for this, they need like a love of the game little small speed guy to do that the motion at the snap stuff, so that Harrison is like the X receiver when the ball is snapped, but it's some little dude right here close to him is the slot that just takes that outside, clears the trash out, essentially. They 100% need that guy. They needed that last year, and I was kind of killing them for not adding that to the Cardinals roster. So that's a little sneaky addition that you dorks who listen to this podcast can be excited about when you see them add that in free agency or in the draft.
Why are the Cardinals signing this guy for 1 year, $11 million? It's like, well, that's one singular role.
Space. Clear some space. That's what they're doing. Okay, so that was like 20 minutes on Mike LaFleur. We've got to be the only podcast that's doing 20 minutes on Mike LaFleur to the Cardinals. One other one that I'm excited about that I like, that this is probably a little under the radar too. I like the Commanders promoting David Blough to be the offensive coordinator and take the place of Cliff Kingsbury. And I will say this is obviously a huge projection. So this is mostly all in theory, and I could totally be wrong on everything that I'm about to say here, Nate. But I'm going to run you my fan fiction on this that I think is based in reality a little bit. So David Blough, for people who do not know David Blough, one, he's 30 years old. He's a fast riser in the coaching carousel. He was starting games. One of the many guys this coaching cycle that was starting games not that long ago. Like Sean Mannion was on a roster not that long ago. Davis Webb on a roster not that long ago. David Blough was starting games as recently as 2022 and spent his last year in the NFL on the Lions practice squad in 2023, which is an important thing to note. Because David Blough was essentially with the Lions all throughout Ben Johnson's rise up the coaching ranks. Began his career in 2019 with the Lions, which was Ben Johnson was actually there with Matt Patricia's staff. People forget about that. Then he was elevated to the passing game coordinator role, the tight end coach. Like David Blough was there all throughout that kind of little rise before, again, finishing in 2023. And my suspicion when they moved on from Kingsbury and quickly promoted David Blough was that they wanted to keep some of what Kingsbury was doing, but they also wanted to incorporate, did the Commanders, some of these tenets of like Ben Johnson's offense. What we're talking about, more of a physical ground game, under center concepts, shots off in breaking routes from play action. And Dan Quinn literally said at his at his presser after hiring David Blough, he wants the offense to be more under center, more play action shots. Truly exactly what my little fan fiction was kind of thinking there. So I think some of this is grounded in reality, but obviously, of course, it is a big projection. What do you think about the Commanders promoting David Blough as the offensive coordinator?
Yeah, I feel like it's going to be a little bit of a smorgasbord offense. So I think he even played under Kingsbury too. So I think there's going to be some of those ideas. Yep. And that's the thing, is that some of like even just the run game stuff was always like very sound and very much like, pro style. It just would have window dressing of tempo and being more gun heavy. I would say that always one of my issues with Kingsbury's offense, and I had a few, but I did think the Washington tenure was pretty good, was that the passing game can be outside based. It was that way with Kyler and that way with when they had Hopkins, and they even brought in AJ Green. And also just the play action game. So like they would do play action, but the play action concept wouldn't be attacking the areas you're faking towards, if that makes sense. So there's a lot of flash fakes and then throw outside. That to me is redundant. Because corners don't care about a run fit. They're just like, all right, I'm on my coverage. All right, I don't care. So I think that we're going to get a little bit of a hodgepodge, because like you want Jane Daniels in the gun to use his legs. Under center, the knock of under center is the limitations of the QB run game. But I still think the benefits, and you don't have to base out it. You don't have to be 50% like some of the teams are, but just more of it. And I think some more methodical drives, and not always being no huddle, not always just being that, just be able to mix it up a little bit. I think it's nice that he has some carryover from Kingsbury. So I'm sure tempo will be used at times. And again, you got to use that because it created a lot of simple looks for their against defenses. That's like what some of the benefit of it all was. And that's why I think Jane Daniels was able to transition to the NFL. He had a lot of starts in college, and he was like, oh, this is how defense is playing me. Great. But I think a little bit more methodicalness to the offense is what they're going for. A lot of stuff that ties together rather than just running a bunch of ball plays. And obviously they like him. Going from assistant QB coach to OC is a big bump. It wasn't assistant quarterback coach, 1 year at tight end coach, 1 year at quarterback coach, and then OC. Like, so obviously teams like him. He stayed around as a backup quarterback for a while. He wasn't a very good one, but he, like most of these guys are, but those who can do, those who can't teach. It's very easy. And those who can't teach work in a front office.
Teach Jim.
That's always my joke. Teach Jim. Or they prospect players. No, so I think it's going to be a little bit of smattering. It's not going to be, oh my God, they're 100% under center, or it's going to look exactly like the Lions with Jared Goff. But I think it's just going to be meeting in the middle of what they already did well, but adding a little bit more traditionalness to the offense. But being under Ben Johnson's and Kevin O'Connell as a player, pretty fun offenses to kind of be under as far as how you tie the run game and the pass game and everything.
Exactly. I mean, they were number one in shotgun rate last year. 87% of their snaps were out of shotgun, were the Commanders. So that's what I think is exciting about this, because Yeah, it's meeting in the middle there. I mentioned my static offense rankings again,
Yeah.
lower number being less static and better. If you didn't watch or listen to the AFC show again, go back and check it out. But it's a blend of their, and I'll tweet this out at some point, even though I'm sure people will just make fun of me for coming up with some dumb stat that doesn't mean anything. But who cares? It's a blend of your rate of plays and heavy person. Well, that's all that matters. Your blend of rate of plays in heavy personnel packages, that's either two plus tight ends, 2+ running backs, under center rate, drop back motion rate, and play action rate. The Commanders were 22nd last year, and the Bears were, of course, we're saying blending this Ben Johnson stuff in there, they were second in terms of like the static rankings. So I think that there is a way that if we meet just in the middle there, this offense looks a lot different. And I'm just saying from a fantasy perspective, if this offense is playing fast and they're still playing with tempo, but it's more normal football and not some of the Cliff Kingsbury goofiness. Like this quote that we're throwing up here right now from Blough is a good example of something that I think obviously from like a fantasy standpoint, people are going to take this to the extreme here. Blough said, this thing in terms of the offense is going to be built around how do we get Terry McLaurin 10 targets a game. That does not mean that Terry McLaurin is going to average 170 or going to get 170 targets this season, literally 10 a game. That is not what that means. But I think what it does mean is there's going to be more dynamic deployment of the pass catchers, and not just Terry McLaurin lines up on one side of the field for 90% of his plays like he does under Cliff Kingsbury and only runs this like very straight line route tree.
Yeah.
I think McLaurin can do more than that. And I think that they do need more receivers generally that can be more dynamic in terms of the pre-snap stuff. That's where I think that this offense can get pretty exciting. If it's still playing fast, like with some of the Kingsbury tenets, it still has some of the same run game elements that we do like that Cliff does, but the passing game just feels more under center, shots over the middle of the field. I don't know about you. I don't know where you are with Jaden Daniels, but like I think he can do more than just live in the college offense world, and that's a pretty exciting potential blend there from a fantasy asset standpoint.
No matter Jaden Daniels has already shown me he can win in a certain way. If he wants longevity and he wants a 14-year career rather than a burns brightly for 6 years and fades away, it's that he has to learn this at some point. He has to learn to operate from under center. And he has done it though. Arizona State, they were under center a good amount, enough that I can remember it right here. And so it's not like he's never done it before. He also has the athleticism and also the height to operate from under center, because that's the classic reason why you put guys in the gun was they weren't tall enough. He's 6'4". He's my height. I mean, he's a very tall. One of those ones, every time I interview him, I'm like, yeah, man, God, ain't you run like a 4.3? God, that's not fair. But it's one of these things where he can, I know, right? And then you see Trevor and he's like 6'6", and you're like, okay, that's why those are 5-star recruits. This was a 2-star recruit right here. So I watched, I think he can do these things, the things that like this offense is going to ask him to do. I'm excited about it. I think it's not going to be, it has to be a blend. Caleb Williams took some time to adjust to Ben Johnson going full bore into a more traditional offense and under center, yada, yada. I think Jaden, because of his running gifts and how he wants to play, you have to keep him in the gun a little bit, but I do like this a good amount. Also, same discussion about condensed spread formations applies to Jaden, this offense too. Going from a spread heavy offense to one that's going to be probably more condensed as well.